What's happening, HD Nation? This is Zach Edwards with another episode of the Adventure Box Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. I have a lot of fun doing this. I hope you do too. We talk about all things history, especially right now, the War of 1812, and we are just about to end it. Actually, today we're not talking about anything with the war. We're talking about the aftermath. And in preparation to talk about what we're going to be talking about next week, the westward expansion. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk about it. What are we going to be talking about today? So today we're exploring the powerful aftermath of the War of 1812. It's basically, well, we're going to be talking about the era of good feelings. And basically how the war transformed America's politics into what it is today. Literally, this is close to being why we've changed our political leanings. But at the same time, interesting enough, it was also a part of a peace between the two political parties. Well, actually, I should say multiple political parties, because we had like 3 or 4. Though like today, we have 2 major ones, and we have a whole bunch of smaller ones. I mean, today it's not even a 2-party system. It's like a 5 to 10 party system, but it's 2 main ones. Same with back then. There was 2 main ones. This is going to be, at this point, we're starting to move in when the Republicans come in. So we have the Democrats, which we can go over a little bit. We'll do that next year. Actually, you know what? We'll probably wait until we talk to about Andrew Jackson. So it's going to be next month. So this month of units is we're going to be talking about westward expansion. We're going to talk about this as well. But this is basically where we actually, during the time of the era of good feelings, we have almost a peace, a calmness between the parties. So we go from brutal politics to very calm politics to brutal politics. Like we always talk about how our politics is way worse than what we've ever experienced in history. Lie. That's a complete lie. It was a lot worse in the past than it is now. Ours is still bad, but it was even worse in the past. The second thing we're going to talk about, besides the era of good feelings, is the growing debate between free market capitalism and government involvement. So that's a really big one. This basically shapes our economy. So we talked about politics, we're going to be talking about economy, and then finally, how Americans took its strengthened navy to an adversary in the Mediterranean. This is when we end the threat of what was called the Barbary Pirates and ended it for once and for all. Okay, so let's dive into this moment in history, the time when Americans stepped back from the fires of war and began to define what kind of country we were to be. Okay, so the war just ends. Let me set this up. War just ends. We have the Treaty of Ghent. It's signed in 1815. And then we have the British attack New Orleans after the treaty is signed. Again, why was that? It's because you don't have a telegram or a cell phone or any kind of video chat or internet to stop a ship from doing what it was meant to do. Because you have no idea what is going around the world at the same time. So we have no idea of what lack of communication they used to have a long time ago before they had technology to communicate. So, yeah, because of that, we had the Battle of New Orleans. This showed that the Americans could not be conquered, they would not be broken, and they had a new pride among them. The war had shown that the young republic could stand at the ground against the British Empire a second time. And with the victory of New Orleans, news of peace arrived. Well, actually, before even the treaty, the news of the treaty had arrived. So all these different triumphs are coming in. Treaty with Great Britain, boom, one great triumph. Battle of New Orleans, boom, another triumph, around the same time. This created a surge of national pride. People were proud to be Americans. You know the song, Proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. Comes from basically, not the song, but that mentality came from this point in time. Before that, America was very split. You had New Yorkers, you had South Carolinians, you had New Englanders. Everyone had their own niche and stayed with their niche until this war. So the War of 1812 brought the United States together. Now, the Federalist Party, which had opposed the war and also even discussed secession at the Hartford Convention, basically collapsed in shame. Gone. Done deal. Bye-bye. At the same time, the Democratic Republican Party, yes, it was actually called the Democratic-Republican Party, once were skeptical of a strong central government, now stood alone and had to basically evolve. President James Monroe, our next president in 1816, elected in 1816, he basically faced almost no political opposition. Everyone was together. Now, interesting enough, Andrew Jackson had not jumped into the presidential race, which is why he did not become president. But he had so much momentum, he probably could have, and if he did, he might have won. Except this was, again, the time, the era of good feelings, and so they did not want to be competitive. So President James Monroe wins 1816. For a moment in time, it feels like America has finally become one nation. Unity. They're all united with one party and one purpose, and there is growth and self-reliance throughout the nation. Now, another thing, the American identity solidified. What was that identity? Okay, so this period also saw that there was a strengthening national identity. What was it? Pride in the flag. That's right. The American flag flew now with pride. Everywhere around the world where the American flag was, you didn't just have pride from the people in the nation, in America, you had people with seeing the pride from around the world. So it actually meant something. The Star-Spangled Banner, written during the defense of Fort McHenry as a poem, began spreading and became the unofficial anthem for the United States. So these are all part of the identity. And then the next one, which is very important for next week when we talk about the westward expansion, it's called Manifest Destiny. That America was destined to expand and began to take hold of all the land around them. So, yes, they couldn't go into Canada. That was Britain's. They couldn't go into Mexico because that was actually a friend of theirs, Mexico. The Spanish actually owned that land at the time, but would soon lose it as well. For the first time, Americans were seeing themselves as not just citizens of separate states, but as part of a nation, or a national project, we'll say, at this point. Okay, so what happens when a war ends, embargoes go down, people start trading? What happens? Well, the economy picks up. What's the economy? The economy is the trading of goods between parties. So whether it was Britain to the United States, France to the United States, or if it was at home between the merchant and the consumer. This is all part of the economy. So the post-war economy actually had some challenges. So this new unity didn't mean that there weren't disagreements, especially when it came to the economy. The war actually exposed many weaknesses. First, the U.S. lacked a central bank to stabilize its currencies and also its credit lines, its debt. The second thing is there was little infrastructure to move troops and goods around. There were no trains at the time. Trains. That would be interesting. And American industry had grown during this British blockade, but now needed protection to survive in peace times. Yes, that's right. It survived the blockades, but they still were going from nation to nation across the Atlantic Ocean, which is very, very big. And if a pirate finds them, who may or may not be attached to an actual country, they could be taken over. So there's a lot of issues that come with this. So now the question is, with all those questions, do you strengthen your central government? The Federalist paper, or the Federalists, they favored a single government, a centralized government. Federalists, they loved a strong federal government. And then you had the anti-federalists who did not want one. They wanted less power to the central government. But all of a sudden you're talking about an economy where you have a navy that needs to keep the people safe, the merchants safe, and their ships safe when they're sailing between the United States and other countries, and the other countries back to the United States. You have the central bank discussion. Well, a central bank creates a central government. It's controlled by the central government. Infrastructure. Most likely it's not going to be the for-profits, because they're going to be worried about their business and trying to grow their business as much as the roads around them, or even when it comes to bringing goods and troops around, putting a train system together, because there is no trains at this time. So, it's a big question. The question is, free market capitalism or government intervention? How much do you want of either? If even wanting any. So, if we had just a free market capitalism, completely free market, it means I trade you a good for something in return, a currency or other goods, which works great. It does. It works amazingly. And those products that were overpriced drop in value very much, because any competitor can come in and do the exact same thing that you're doing and bring the price lower. And most people are going to go buy that lower priced good. So the free market is perfect when it comes to setting a price on things. But what about getting into debt? Now, I can go to John, some random person, and say, I want to borrow money from you, and I will pay you back at this amount. And John says, yeah, we could do that. Great. I get to borrow money. Or I can go to the bank and say, okay, I'll pay you this amount of money. The bank's going to be giving me a lower credit rate. So like say I have to pay, my interest would be 12% with John, but the central government will give it to me for 4%. No brainer. Hello, less interest. I'm going to go to the central bank. This became a big question. It used to be that you could borrow from somebody else. Now, if you fail to pay back either one, you get in trouble. Doesn't matter if it was the central bank or if it was the private lender. Now, in the United States right now, we still have a lot of private lenders. They'll let you borrow whatever amount of money, but you're going to be paying a very high interest rate. For instance, there's a company that wanted to invest in my company. And so they said, that's great. We'll give it to you for 12% interest rate. I was like, no, that's debt. I would rather give you equity in my company. It's like, well, you're just starting off. So we're going to give you debt. I'm like, here's the thing. I can literally go to the bank and borrow $500,000 at like a 7%. Or I could borrow it from you at like 12%. Which one do you think I'm going to do? So this is where the free market capitalism has a question with government intervention. Because like a central bank, government intervention. What about when it comes to rules and regulations? I have gotten into so many arguments with the states, with certain states over certain regulations that makes no sense to me and is different depending on which state you go to. Totally horrible. And so they have so much power because they're the state that I can only do certain things. So what do? Here's the question. Should the government take a strong role in shaping the economy or let the market itself sort it out? I'm going to leave that question to you. That will be our action item I already have another action item, but I'm going to leave that one for you to decide and put them in the comments below. The next one that's questionable is the government, the American system. How are we going to form the American system? Government stepping in or not? So what did we do? One of the most influential voices during this time, his name is Henry Clay. He opposed the American system. Basically, the American system was, and I should have said this before, it was a plan of national growth built around three pillars. One, the national bank to manage the currencies and debt. Two, protective tariffs. That's right, the government, much like what we're doing right now, is we are putting tariffs on other countries. Other countries put tariffs on us. Do you know what a tariff is? Let me explain. A tariff is basically when you say China is selling us a good, and Trump says, I'm going to put a tariff, right now it's 148% on that good. China's like, no, 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 you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. The thing is, China doesn't pay the tariff. No, the manufacturer inside the United States pays the tariff. Because what's happening is they're trying to raise the price of the Chinese goods so people buy more goods inside the United States. These are protective tariffs, such as like when a car company comes up with a new car. Well, I think it was like Mercedes and like every country out there have protective tariffs on certain goods like cars. And so they jack up the price, they move up the price, the tariffs for imports into their country. So say we want to send a Ford out to France. You'll never see a Ford in France because the tariff that they put on Ford trucks or Ford cars is extremely high. The regulations that you have on them, air pollution, certain safety standards. I mean, we have higher safety standards than they do, but they have like higher environmental standards than we do. And so those are all trade barriers that are put up. So you'll never find a Ford truck in France, at least of right now. Now, if Trump's what he's trying to do works, they will get rid of all the tariffs against American trucks, and we will get rid of all the tariffs in the United States. What does that mean? It means that we can sell Fords in France, and you'll see Fords in France. And in here, we will take whichever company they have. I know we have like Mercedes, BMW, Lexus. All those ones are made outside the United States. So all those different things. Okay, the third one, moving on, federal funding for internal improvements, infrastructure. You have roads, canals, bridges. These are all things that the government plays a part, the American system. Now, if Henry Clay had his way, probably wouldn't have a central bank, which is not that bad of a thing. We wouldn't have the Fed. Okay, protective tariffs. We wouldn't have that. Actually, ever since probably World War II, we really haven't had any tariffs on any other country. And yet they've tariffed us to the hilt as much as possible to protect the goods in their own country, the things that they're actually producing. Okay, so that's not a bad thing. Yeah, get rid of those two. But here's the third one, and this is the biggest one, is the infrastructure. Who's going to build the roads if the government doesn't build the roads? Sorry to say, it's most likely not going to be the private companies because they're more interested in keeping their companies safe. So who's going to take care of the roads? Who's going to take care of the canals? Who's going to take care of the bridges? This is where the central government actually does play a good place, because if every company is just looking out for themselves, there's no reason for them to build roads. Or, I was going to say train tracks, but certain companies would want to bring certain goods to other locations. They would build the railroad tracks for themselves, which they did. That's right. It wasn't just the government. There was a lot of privately owned railroad tracks, but there weren't privately owned roads. Because for one thing, you couldn't just build a road through private land or through public land. The public land is not public in the sense that you can set up shop there. No, it's public because anyone can use it. Which means if you want to do a railroad track, you have to actually buy all the land from point A all the way down to point B, which they did do before the federal government started taking over those railroads. So in 1816, Congress created the second Bank of the United States because the first one was shut down. This passed basically they also passed a protective tariff on a lot of goods that we were producing inside the United States. If someone tried from the outside tried to produce what we were producing, the tariff would bring a level playing field, or also keep those people out from selling their goods inside the United States. And they supported projects such as like the National Road System. National Roads was basically built around 1820, that time period. So that's an argument for the government intervention into our free market system. So we don't have a free market system these days. There's a lot of government regulation and rules and infrastructure and all these other things that keep us from having a free market. And also the fact of just the fact that the government says you can't price gouge means that we don't have a free and open market, because the seller doesn't get to choose that. And consumers might be happy that, well, they're keeping them down. But it also means not just that they might keep them down because of like an emergency, but the government actually has the power to squash the prices to near nothing in order to sell in the United States. That's horrible. That's what having those price gouging measures are. You can't bring eggs over this price. Well, I can't buy them for under that price. Sorry, you can't do it. Well, great. Then I won't sell eggs. No, you have to sell eggs because we don't have any eggs over here. What are you going to do? Have the government sell you eggs because they won't drop the price for the price gouging? Sorry, that's the issue. So many Southerners and also Western leaders, especially former Jeffersonians, this is what they called themselves, they argued that the tariffs hurt farmers by raising the prices of import goods. Basically, when they sold it to France, by having that tariff in there, by France having their tariff in there, because the United States had a tariff, again, reciprocal, then they couldn't sell their goods in France because the price was increased. They also said that the National Bank concentrated too much power for the elite. Those that were basically unelected, that was the National Bank. Unelected bureaucrats controlling everything inside the banks. And it gave that power to those that had power, influence, and money. The last one that they did, there's a few more, but the last one I'm going to focus on is internal improvements, that they favored the Northeast, the New England area, the New York area, over the rural and agricultural regions. So those are really good reasons to not want the government intervention, a strong central government dabbling in our economy. There's another one that was a fairly recent one. It's giving money to their friends, their pet projects. There's a company that used to be called Solyndra. And Solyndra was a solar power company. They developed solar panels. And they totally flopped. But they used up like $1 billion worth of US currency from the government in order to try to help establish their company inside the United States. The problem is they were so poorly managed because it was all bureaucracy. And they went under. And all $1 billion either went to the CEO, the employees, the parts that they didn't have, it all went away. The United States could not take back anything from Solyndra because they had given that money to them. So these free market advocates believed that the government should do less, not more, and that individual liberties and entrepreneurial freedoms would drive the economy, which it would have. Now, at the same time, the only thing I was arguing about is for the infrastructure. The infrastructure, sorry to say it, they would not build it unless they're going to make money off it. And the only way they're going to make money off it, the toll roads, every single road would be a toll road. And that person that built the road would be collecting the tolls for them. That is the one debate that I could actually see why people would want to have that. So this debate between the federal involvement and free enterprise never went away. It's still here today. So let's talk about the legacy of this. and then we're going to go in because I'm running out of time. You know what? I'm just going to disregard this part. Basically, I'm just recapping a lot of the things we've already said. With the era of good feeling, was American hands-off economy, or was the government fully involved? It was fully involved. So let's go into the end of our friends, the Barbary Pirates. Now, what were the Barbary Pirates? Let's bring this up. I'm going to show you a map. In here, you got the United States. Directly east, you have the Mediterranean. The Barbary Pirates were pirates coming from the North African coast. That's right. Along the North African coast, you've got all these different cities. The Barbary Pirates, actually, let's say, remember privateers? They would attack other ships in part for that country. Britain had them, France had them, Spain had them, the United States had them. Yes. The Barbary Pirates were basically the same thing. They were African sailing pirates that were privateers because of the countries that actually, like Algeria. That was actually, they were actually one of the ones that had the Barbary Pirates, who would then bring goods to Algeria to give to the government of Algeria. That's what a privateer is. So the interesting thing is that the Barbary Pirates were not exactly pirates. Now there was no war with the Algeria, which is why I guess you could say that it wasn't that they were actually pirates, because there was probably no agreement between them. But the Algerian government and the Libyan government and all those in the North African area all favored those pirates because they were provided for by the pirates. A lot of it was underhanded. This was also included Tripoli and Tunis. So they basically demanded tribute. These countries demanded tribute from the United States that said, we will give you safe haven against the Barbary Pirates and all your merchant ships if you pay us every year. We didn't with Washington. We did with Jefferson. Adams. We did with Jefferson. But then came Monroe, I think it was. Who was the one with the second? I think it was Jefferson that had the first Barbary War. And then the second Barbary War. Actually, I do talk about this in my notes. Okay, so let's bring this up. Just after the War of 1812, the piracy resumed in the Mediterranean. So the U.S. had fought in the first Barbary Pirates under Jefferson. They won. But in winning, they were still paying tribute to Algeria, Libya, Tunisia, and also Tripoli. So they're paying tribute to allow safe haven. But after the War of 1812, it picked up again. With its invigorated navy, the U.S. finally had the strength to deal with them decisively, straight on. So that's why the Second Barbary War started in 1815. In 1815, Congress authorized the use of force under President James Madison. He dispatched 2 squadrons under Commodore Stephen Decatur and also William Bainbridge. Decatur sailed to the Mediterranean and quickly captured several of the pirate ships, commandeered them. He then forced Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli to sign a treaty. Actually, what's really interesting, you got to look at the actual battles. In the textbook, you'll actually see some of the battles. I actually talk about some of the battles. There was one captain that basically took over a pirate ship and then used that to attack all the other pirates. Great stories. Okay, so what does this treaty say? They freed all the American prisoners. When the pirates took over a ship, they would also take the sailors captive. They'd give them to the government. The government would sell them back to the United States. What they also did, and so that treaty ended that. No more American prisoners. No more enslaving them. No more having to buy them back. They ended the tribute system as well. Basically paying Algiers, not Algeria. I gotta make that correction. Algiers which is up at the northern part of Algeria. It's a city, though. Basically saying you don't have to pay any more tribute to Algiers to keep the pirates from attacking your ship. And they also guaranteed a safe passage for American ships at this point. So this marked the very end of the American dependency on European powers for protection. This also increased the pride of America because we had a navy that could actually go after certain foreign affairs. So this is why the War of 1812 and the Second Barbary War, basically the same time period, was so important. That ends it for this unit. The War of 1812 is often overshadowed by the Revolution and then the Civil War. But its legacy is very powerful. You need to understand this. It forged national pride in the United States. It also kicked off the era of good feelings. It also ignited a lasting debate of the government's role in the economy. And the last thing it did, it gave America the confidence to protect its trade, its interests, its ships around the world. People actually started to respect the United States finally after the War of 1812. So the war didn't just end in 1815, it launched the country into a new era where they were stronger, more unified, and ready to take on any issue that comes on the global stage. It was finally putting a foothold in the world, saying that America will not be messed with. So here's another engagement question. Now, what was the first one? I'm going to look back at my notes. What was the first one? Tariffs. No. It was, oh yeah, what did you like? Free market capitalism or government intervention? How much? How little? Put it in the comments below. I want to know. That's question number 1. How much do you want the government messing with our economy? The second question is, what do you think? Should government shape the economy? Should it actually protect all? I guess my engagement question was the exact same one I just said. So great, I'm on the same mindset. But how to add to the first one, and actually the only one, how do we balance unity with the difference between regions and interests? Regions when it comes to the states, regions when it comes to the United States versus like Britain. How much government intervention should be in this, especially when it comes to markets, economy, our trade relationships with any of these other countries? Please put them in the comments below. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. I'll even mention them if they're of note. Or you can email me, zach@historicalconquest.com. I want to know what you have to say and what your thoughts are. Maybe use this as one of your assignments. Write me. Tell me what you think. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.